In this first aid series using tuning forks, I'm going to be talking about headaches and how to relieve that with a weighted tuning fork. Now, by headaches, I'm not talking about the fact that you have a migraine. That's going to be a completely different thing, and it'll be for different reasons. I'm talking about a headache where your head actually aches. It's usually on the top part of your head, somewhere from here up. And there's actually going to be a location where, if you can point to the headache, you can point to a location where you're pressing down on your head in the location, and you can actually feel pain as well, and that aching that's going along with it. We're going to put our tuning forks, what we call a point and shoot. Put the tuning fork right on the spot that aches. Now, when it comes to what's actually happening and why the tuning forks are going to help, is somewhere up here, maybe it could be on the temple or something like that. Let's say that my headache is, if I was to put my hand on where my head aches, it's right here on my temple. So what happens is, it's not on the inside of your skull that's happening. It's actually happening between the skull and the outer dermis, or your epidermis of your skin. There's interstitial spaces. There's adipose layers. There's things that are happening on the outside, the tissue that surrounds your skull. There's where the fluid starts to build up. And we have pain and aches because of our nervous system. We have, let's say that my fingers are the endings of my nervous system, where I have pressure that's pressing down against my pain receptors. Why is there pressure on the pain receptors? And that's primarily because in larger areas of our body, that's where pressure, because of fluid, tends to build up. And these are the superficial layers that we have. It could be just below my skin here. It could be on any part of your body where the fluid that comes out of your cardiovascular system, we know as plasma. We call that interstitial fluid. And in our head, we still have problems where we have a lot of fluid that builds up within our superficial layers outside of our skull. In fact, you can get a lot of buildup right up here because of what happens underneath the hair and underneath the skin. There's many different layers here. It could be a layer of, like, what's called an aponeurosis, which is this crown up here where we get a lot of balding in the male balding pattern and those things. There's actually very tight fascial layers in there. And then there's muscle layers, and then there's adipose layers, that is where our fat cells are. And in those layers, you get fluid that tends to get trapped in there. That's one of the reasons why we have balding or graying hair. The fluid, the largest part of our head where fluid gets trapped, is right up here. So sometimes you can get fluid pockets here, and then you can get other pockets here that tend to press against our nervous system or our pain receptors. So what you're going to end up doing is just putting the tuning fork right on those areas. You're vibrating the fluid in whatever compartment is keeping it in place. Once you're able to get that fluid through whatever area that's compartmentalizing, and it's usually fascia bags within bags that are keeping that fluid in its existing compartment. That fluid can't get out, and it's causing pressure. So inside of that bag, if you put the tuning fork on it and put a little pressure on it, it'll actually vibrate the fluid through whatever layer is containing it, and that will relieve the pressure, and that will hopefully relieve the pain and the ache. So what we're going to do is take a weighted tuning fork. It looks like this. This happens to be 128 hertz frequency. And in a tuning fork that's weighted, we have weights down on this end. And what that does is it causes an uneven weight distribution along this metal bar. We usually think of the frequency of this tuning fork. It's considered 128 hertz in this case because the metal tines will move back and forth 128 times per second. And that's the vibration that we usually think of. If this was unweighted, we would be able to hear it at that frequency. And of course, we can still hear this weighted tuning fork, but you just have to hold it a little closer to your head. So the general consensus is that the vibrations from the weights are actually traveling down the tines and into the stem. This weighted tuning fork is primarily built and designed to be able to have the base of it held against the skin. In this case, it's going to be against some part of my head. And there's some things to consider here. We don't want to add anything onto the end of this. So let me explain what I mean by that. There are some tuning forks that have extensions onto the end. If you notice, this one has a 15 millimeter jump foot attached to the end of it. So when you don't have anything attached to the end of it, you have weights on this end and you have nothing on this end. See that the weight is all on that end. So there's a bending and a flexing as you start to do things down here and there's movement. It's going to make this metal bar flex down on this end as well, kind of wildly, even though you usually don't see it. And then because of the undistribution, there's a fulcrum point here that makes this end bend and flex in different ways. This is where you get all that movement here to allow, when you press against the tissue of your skin, that fluid can actually diffuse through those layers where fluid is being contained. So you want as much movement down in this end as possible. Now, if you start to put something like this on the other end of it, then this weight now is a little more evenly distributed. I have weight here and I have weight here. It's probably not the same, but you can see how the end here will not be moving as much as this one because they're almost the same weight. So a lot less movement. So anytime you put an attachment like this, or even a larger attachment like this, it would be even more weight, like a 25 millimeter. That's even more weight, and you're evening this out. You're dampening the effect of what's happening here by balancing out the weights on both ends. So when you're dealing with fascia or something like that, you want to make sure that this is uneven distribution here. Try to leave the ends as much as possible to be what we would call barefoot. And we're going to be holding this right up against the skin, the base of it. Now there is a little divot here, and you want to be careful on the angle that you hold this, because if you put it at an angle like this and start to stretch the skin, you're going to feel this little divot try to scrape against the skin, and it won't feel very good. So how do we grip this tuning fork? Most people will grip it by the stem right here, and we actually have another location where we're going to grip the fork. Up here in this meaty part of the fork, meaty metal-wise, we're actually going to grasp it up here on the yoke. This gives us a better gripping area or gripping surface. Now, the reason why most sound healers won't put their fingers up here is they think it's going to dampen out the vibration. And in fact, it does not do that. You can actually walk your fingers right up these tines as it's vibrating. It'll get to about right here before it'll start to dampen out what's happening in the flexing up here. This would be the fulcrum point. So we have plenty of movement and area down here that we can grasp on. But what I'm going to do is put my thumb right there on the flat part and just grasp it with my index finger and just clamp right down on it. And I can, of course, curve the rest of my index finger right around it. So here's my grasping. When you strike, you can strike with whatever striking surface you normally have. If you have an activator or a rubber surface like a puck, we like to use our hand just because we have a little less to hold on to. So notice where I'm putting that weight nice and flat against my hand. That's going to be the actual location where I'm going to bounce it off my hand. So I just do a bounce off that location. Now it's vibrating, and I'm going to put it right on the location where I know if it's on my temple, then I'm going to put it right on my temple, and I'm going to press down enough. There's actually a little bit of meat there, but keep in mind that there's a lot of, especially in the temple, there's a lot of nerve endings, and there's a lot of things going on there where I have a lot of my vessels and nerves running through here. So, and especially if it's full of fluid, and it might be a little more sensitive and a little bit painful when you press against it. So make sure that it's that you're not doing it at an angle. You are going to have to press in a little bit. And how much do you press in? You'll press in just enough to where if I press any more, then I'm moving my head. But you want to press in with a little bit of pressure. It's the pressure that's really going to help with this. And then you're going to let that vibration run out until you don't feel it, or in this case, you're probably going to hear it on the inside of your head. And we just want to be able to put enough placements, another strike, another placement in the same location if we need to. But you can use several placements around here. I'm moving it around, but each movement is not what I'm going to do in real life. Each movement that I'm doing is I'm just showing you how far away the placements would be on each individual strike. So I'd strike again, I'd put it about that far away, strike again, put it about that far away. And if you can feel where the fluid is building up, maybe you can feel that. But if you're feeling around and you're feeling pain, then you're going to put it right on that area, right on your temple. And you're probably going to want to do it on both sides as well. If it's on the forehead, put it on that location as well. If it's up on the top, you want to put it on the soft tissue on the top as well. And that is resolving headache issues. So who are we? We are NAHC Academy. We teach techniques using weighted and unweighted tuning forks. Our website is nahcacademy.com. On the left-hand side, you see our logo for vibrational fascia release, called VFRT. We actually teach paid training courses and certifications for VFRT. That would be for using the weighted tuning forks. Primarily, we use the 128 hertz tuning fork for many physical conditions. Primarily, it's rapid pain relief and mobility restrictions throughout the entire body. And we have protocols for different sets of conditions and diagnoses. And we have therapists that are certified throughout the world, and we have trainers that can teach the class as 3-day intensives over the weekend. And we have online training as well for VFRT. On the right-hand side, you see vibrational chronotherapy, or VCT. This is using primarily unweighted tuning forks or tuning fork sets. So how both of these work together is when you deal with the physical pain and mobility restrictions, once you take care of those problems, and most of those are fascia-related and fluid-related, pressurized fluids. Once you take care of those things, then your body still has some things that it needs to take care of as far as resetting, recalibrating, resynchronizing things that your body needs. Your body deals in timing circuits, and the science of chronobiology is all around the ability for your entire body and your brain to work in synchronization with each other. And there's many conditions that still continue to have therapeutic approaches to it because you still need to recalibrate or resynchronize. The brain tries to map itself out where it is in space and time so that all your systems can be coordinated together. For example, your motor control, your movement of your muscles and your body. Your brain needs to know where your body is at any given time and tries to map out where everything is. Your thought processes, your cognitive memory and behavior and emotions are all time-based as well, where your predictive coding of your brain tries to predict and anticipate certain events before they happen, that if your external sensors pick up things and it's not coordinating with your predictive coding and your mapping of your environment, then there's where you have prediction errors and you have problems like anxiety and stress and PTSD and motor control problems and speech problems, because what your brain thinks should happen and what is actually being sensed as happening are two different things. And synchronization is at the core of a lot of that. We use the unweighted tuning forks just off the body. It's not a diagnosis involved in this. We have protocols for around the head with your auditory sensors and through the entire body with your touch or vibration sensors just underneath the skin. And we hold the tuning forks just off the skin, just within an inch or two off the skin. And the sensors that you have in your skin that are based off of vibration, that helps your brain and your body systems time and synchronize each other to the tuning forks. So that VCT training is actually free and it's available to you from our website, and you get a certification from us for free as well. So we have videos available on our website, and we have videos available on our YouTube channel. So if you go into YouTube and search for NHC Academy. You'll be able to find these videos and more in the VCT videos there. And we have a Facebook group, so if you go on Facebook and look for NHC Academy, you'll be able to join our private Facebook group where we make announcements, we talk about things we're doing, and other people that have already used these techniques, they can ask questions and talk about using tuning forks, both weighted and unweighted.